like he is wanting to sit out from here on out, Jimmy?
I'll for sure be out there, coaching, cheering, running the ball. I'm out there full go, 1,000%. And I'm trying to get better. I'm trying to lead this young group that we got. And, it's a hungry group, and I like the locker room that we got. I think we got some guys that's bought in and just ready for leadership. So, I think we could do something special this year.
And Dalvin Cook, an integral part in the running game, of course, but also the passing game, too. He was the team's second leading receiver last year, but that was the #1 guy in 2019. Stephon Diggs, who was traded away to Buffalo in the offseason. And here's how important he was to that passing game. 1,100-plus receiving yards. That's more than the rest of the wide receivers on the roster last year combined. 6 of the 16 touchdowns the team had, 63 catches compared to the 74 the rest of the wide receiver group had. And the big play potential, that's what the Vikings will be trying to replace this season. He had 20-plus yard catches. But, Jim, that's why they went out and drafted a guy with their first pick in the NFL draft in 2020, as Justin Jefferson now makes his professional debut here in camp.
Yeah, that's going to be crazy for this youngster, because how do you get ready, Hobie, for an NFL season when you don't get a single snap in the preseason? This workout today that you'll see in a couple of minutes when we join Paul Allen, Ben Lieber, Greg Coleman, and Pete Persich, this is his first step out there to really show that he can do it at this level. And it's a lot of pressure on this kid.
And so far in practices, you've seen him flash. You've seen the catches going low. You've seen him going across the field on some deep routes, catching the ball downfield. Actually, yesterday, he kind of ran into Mike Zimmer a little bit, who was kind of watching in the background. But still, he's made some great plays. He's actually been talking and jawing a lot with the defensive backs, too, and even with some of the defenders who are on the sideline. But one thing, Jim, right now, it's Adam Thielen and Olabisi Johnson who are running with the first team when there are 2 wide receivers on the field. So Jefferson is having to rotate into the mix, but this is a guy, he's seen some of the top levels of football. Just in the national semifinal, he caught 4 touchdown passes against Oklahoma, then went on to help LSU win the national championship against Clemson. But today, he is very excited because he sees this, putting the pads on, as the next step in his evolutionary process in the NFL, if you will.
It's been great to finally just go out there and just play football, finally. To be around the guys, to be around the whole receiver corps, the coaches, the quarterbacks, just everybody just giving me a good vibe. And it just feels good to be finally here and competing with these other guys.
All right, Hobie, you know Jefferson because you're a big LSU fan. You watched him. How much in your mind do you feel he really can step up and be this guy that has that Diggs numbers that you put up on the graphic, that he has to try to match?
I mean, they're going to need him to play. It's no question about it. I know the Vikings are talking about having a solid 4 wide receivers. Well, Justin Jefferson is going to have to be in that mix, if not #2, at least #3. He did a lot of work in the slot just last year at LSU, but earlier in a conference call with reporters, he said, I'm comfortable playing outside too, because that's where I started my career, and that's where he really budded as an emerging wide receiver in the college game. The big thing for him is stepping onto this field and building a rapport with Kirk Cousins, because he did not have OTAs. He didn't even have a rookie minicamp, so now he's getting thrown right into the fire. But Gary Kubiak said yesterday, talking to him about how do you get guys ready who haven't played on the big stage before, he said a lot of these guys have more classroom time than ever before. Now they just have to take what they've learned this entire offseason while being quarantined or dealing with COVID and the lack of conversing with teammates in person. Now they're just having to translate all of that onto the football field, Jim.
Yeah, and speaking of being thrown right into the fire, it's the defensive backs. And this, I think, is the #1 thing for the Vikings this year to solve. Mike Zimmer, we all know he's such a great defensive guru, but he has got to teach basically the whole back end what to do. You'll have Harrison Smith, you'll have Anthony Harris to help line these kids up, but once the ball is snapped, it's on them, Hobie.
And, Jim, it's been very crazy. Just yesterday at practice, I see number 20, I see number 29, and I see number 27. All guys who are used to seeing just have completely different names. But the Vikings went out and they addressed the cornerback position in the draft, getting Jeff Gladney and also Cam Dantzler, both trying to earn a spot onto this roster and to earn a starting job. Because right now, I think it could be considered a 4-person race. Right now, you have Holton Hill on one side and then Mike Hughes on the other side whenever there's 2 corners on the field. But Gladney, they drafted him in the first round for a reason, kind of like what we said with Jefferson. And we know Mike Zimmer loves tall, physical cornerbacks, and I think that's what you're getting with Cam Dantzler. It's a limited sample size from what we've seen so far,
right,
but he's a lot taller than I expected, very long arms. He could be that potential guy who could step in, maybe not week one, but further down into the season where you say, you know what, this kid could really make an impact, and he wasn't the first overall pick, but whenever you're just going by the eye test, I think that he really does pass it right now. However, today, that's all going to change because the pads come on, and we see just how physical they can get against some pretty physical wide receiver talent, too.
Well, and you touched on something there, the size factor of Dantzler, and that's something that Zimmer likes to work with. You saw what he did with Xavier Rhodes because he had that size. He needs that physical presence on the outside against these wide receivers that you're going to go up week in and week out against. So obviously size is something you can't teach, and that's something that he has there. All right, let's switch to the defensive line. And gone is Everson Griffin. He just signed with the Dallas Cowboys. Linval Joseph is out of the middle. Michael Pierce has opted out due to COVID and his battles with asthma. So there is a lot of work that'll have to take place there starting this afternoon.
And Jim, it might not be guys who have started significant amounts of games, but it's still guys who are familiar with this scheme. Whenever you look at the defensive line, and especially the defensive tackle position right now, Shamar Stephen, he's a guy who's been in this system for quite some time, but now they're asking him to move defensive tackle spots. He's going to be lining up at the nose tackle position, but then you bring in Jaleel Johnson. He's a guy out of Iowa who's been here for a while. He made some impact plays, had a couple of sacks last season. And also you talk about the outside. Everson Griffin, he and Daniil Hunter were really the bookends who could really get to the quarterback.
Yep.
But now Afadio Dinabo could step into that starter's position. I'm interested to see what he's going to do today, especially against two established tackles on the offensive line. Can he bend? Can he get around? And also of note, Daniil Hunter, he did not practice yesterday with what Mike Zimmer called earlier today a little tweak. It's going to be interesting to see if he is a full go as the Vikings put on full pads for the first time here today, Jim.
Yeah, and just to remind viewers, we're going to join with the Vikings broadcast here in just a couple of minutes. We're just a few minutes away from the start of the padded practice, something never seen before. It's going to be a lot of fun. Pete Persich, Paul Allen, Greg Coleman, and Ben Lieber will be here to bring you, and then we'll be on the back end to wrap it, but it's going to be a very interesting afternoon. All right, let's chat a little bit about the offensive line. Another point of concern, Ovi, because there are so many things. I was talking to Rick Spielman the other day, and he said, gee, this is such a great time to retool your team right in the middle of a pandemic when you don't have OTAs, you don't have time for one-on-one drills with these people, and you don't get the preseason games. So they've got to figure out a combination to protect Kirk Cousins.
The one good thing they have going for them, Jim, I know every offseason it seems like we enter this thing and say the much maligned Vikings offensive line. Well, coming into this season, they have 4 of the 5 starting spots already locked up. Pat Elflein moving over and kicking out to right guard, but that now opens up the left guard spot as Josh Klein departed in the offseason. But at left tackle right now, another 2 guys who have been in this system before, Avion Collins, who was hurt in training camp last year, really didn't get to see much action, and also Dakota Dozier. Those 2 have really been rotating in almost evenly to get reps at the left guard spot. So it's going to be interesting to see who of those 2 can really step out over the next week or so, because Gary Kubiak, speaking with him yesterday, it certainly sounds like they want to have a starting 5 front group ready to go starting within the next few days, Jim.
Yeah, and I think the big story there is Pat Elflein, because now they've tried him at 2 positions. They're moving him to a 3rd, it sounds like. And if Pat can figure it out and become a vital cog to that line, I think it'll really settle everything else down. All right, speaking of players to watch, let's get you our players to watch. And I'm going to go to the outside because I find this so intriguing. Jefferson against these young defensive backs. Everybody is going to come out there in this padded practice with a chip on their shoulder because these guys want to show Coach Zimmer, they want to show Coach Kubiak that they can get the job done. Meanwhile, the defensive guys want to show their coaches that, hey, we're ready for this. We're ready for week 1 in Aaron Rodgers. I think this is going to be an intriguing battle, and it'll really show just where Jefferson's at in his development, and if Hobie, he can make that step into a day 1 starter.
So many people want to focus on the wide receiver battle right now, and rightly so. I completely get it. But my guy who I'm going to be watching today is a guy who was on the roster last year. We saw flashes, but I think this year he's going to be in for a breakout season, and that is Irf Smith Jr., the tight end, the sophomore tight end, if you will, in his NFL career. He's been a physical presence, especially if you put him out in the slot. He's almost a nickel's nightmare if you're going one-on-one. I want to see what he does to test a guy like Mike Hughes today. That could be a very interesting battle now that the pads are on. And I'm going to go to the defensive side. I might go off the board a little bit, but he's a guy who I really want to see, and that's DJ Wonnum out of South Carolina. A physical freak, if you will. So many people have compared him to Danielle Hunter. You see him on the field, and next to Hunter, he might be the tallest guy on the defensive side of the ball. I really want to see how he can bend around maybe some second team, third team left and right tackles. But I want to see if he can rush the quarterback now that the pads are coming on, Jimmy.
I like that pick, Hobie. That's a good one for the fans to watch. All right, we're going to join the guys at the Vikings Entertainment Network. Next, you'll be joining Paul Allen, Ben Lieber, Pete Persich, and Greg Coleman, as for the first time ever, you get to watch a live padded practice right here on Fox 9.
What's going on? Welcome to Twin Cities Orthopedics Performance Center, specifically TCO Stadium. It's Paul Allen from the Vikings Radio Network with Pete Persich, 14-year analyst for Vikings football on the Vikings Entertainment Network. Those of you watching via Fox 9, we welcome you. Those of you listening via FM 100.3 KFAN or via Vikings.com in the stream, we welcome you to Verizon Vikings Training Camp Live. Ben Lieber and Greg Coleman from the Vikings Entertainment Network will be joining very shortly. And here we are, and no fans at Vikings Training Camp, obviously not preferred, but on a day like this, with no fans, we are going to do our best to make it no problem for you. We will be your eyes through Fox 9 and your ears through KFAN with Vikings training camp and the practice, which will be taking place pretty soon. Now, Pete, before we go to Ben and Greg, let's begin here. The Minnesota Vikings legitimately have many of their best and key players back with Zimmer as head coach and orchestrating the defense, and Gary Kubiak as the offensive coordinator, and he had a lot to do with the offense last year. Continuity's big, good players are important, and good afternoon.
Good afternoon, and you're absolutely right, Paul, and with all the changes and everything that have happened already, and then as we're going into training camp, you need guys like Kirk Cousins, you need guys like Dalvin Cook, you need guys like Eric Kendricks and Anthony Barr, guys who have been down this road many times and know where to go, because not only will they get themselves there and find a way to get themselves there, they're going to bring these young guys up too, because this team offensively and defensively are going to really depend on a rookie or two this year.
No doubt. Coming up on Verizon Vikings Training Camp Live, we have an interview with Mike Zimmer. We also get to say hi to this drone. Hey, what's going on? TCO Stadium, analyst, play-by-play guy. What's going on with that drone? Mike Zimmer, general manager Rick Spielman. No, don't go away. We miss you. It's been a rough 5 months for everybody. We want company. Kyle Rudolph, tight end for the Minnesota Vikings. He will be joining us. And also Gabe Henderson from the Vikings Entertainment Network has a very compelling interview with Super Bowl winning coach Brian Billick with NFL Network and his thoughts on the 2020 Minnesota Vikings. So all of that is coming up shortly as Ben Lieber and Greg Coleman join us now. Ben, Greg, what's going on? And let's cut up this secondary, because there are a lot of questions, at least I think there are, specifically with the cornerbacks for the Minnesota Vikings. A lot of great position battles as we see the players warming up behind you. Ben, you first. Just an overview on those corners. How do you think it's going to work when A-Rod is in town in a month?
Well, first of all, it's good to be with you guys. It is a different feeling training camp, but these guys are out here ready to work. Listen, Jeff Gladney has to come in and be the guy. I mean, you don't draft him that high to sit for a while. He's going to be thrown into the fire. He, along with Cam Dantzler, are going to have to figure things out. Mike Hughes is going to have to figure things out. All these guys in this situation, it's a tough situation, but they have to just do it. And there's no excuses at all.
Guys, I think Holton Hill has an opportunity because he got some playing time, a lot of clock last year. Chris Boyd, another one that Mike Zimmer took personal attention to. So I think that those two I'll keep an eye on.
And now, Pete, when you lay it out the way they did, now Jeff Gladney, the first-round pick from TCU, he has not been practicing, okay? Now, they took him in the first round to not only play him, but probably play him now. But the one we see now via Fox 9 and the stream, Holton Hill, you know, I think the longer Gladney sits out or continues to recover from his malady, as we now see Jeff Gladney on the field, big opportunity for Jeff. Wearing number 20, which used to belong to Mackenzie Alexander, competing with not only those within the secondary, but wide receivers who are good, and we're going to get into that. It's wide open.
It is, and they're going to be seeing a lot of good route runners, if you will, in practice every single day. Now, the physical capabilities are one thing, and that's where a guy like Gladney is going to have an opportunity, because you don't draft a guy in the first round who doesn't have the requisite height, weight, and speed to cover wide receivers in the NFL. The main thing is route recognition, experience, and this is where Holton Hill, I think, has an opportunity. But Mike Hughes is definitely going to be one of the starters and in the mix. Now, will he play nickel? Will he move inside on third downs and things like that? Mm-hmm. Hughes can hit, he can blitz, he can do a lot of different things. I love him in either corner or the nickel position.
Now, Ben, we can see this graphic. You can't. It has Mike Hughes listed as the starter. When it comes to Hughes, absolutely starting, and probably as the inside guy, the spot that Mackenzie Alexander played last year. Ben, do you think Mike is a cinch starter?
Well, he should be. Yeah, I think he's the cinch starter. He was so close last year, and we talked about a lot during the broadcast that he was 90% there on every play, and then just the last 10% maybe didn't make the play at the point of attack. So he's real close. And the thing that we've all liked about him is his aggressiveness and his physicality. So he does move inside. I think he's got the temperament to be both a run stopper and a pass stopper.
And I know you're very bullish on Cameron Dantzler. We're going to chat more about him and have a rookie spotlight coming up a little later. And when we get into wide receivers, very curious to hear what you say about that rookie Kane, Ben. But Greg, before we move on to more corners and or wide receivers, Xavier Rhodes, along with Mackenzie Alexander, Trey Waynes, they're all gone. Now, Trey has an injury. He's probably going to miss the season for the Cincinnati Bengals. That just happened. From afar, you lose a lot of snaps with Rhodes, Alexander, and Waynes, Greg, but is that necessarily a terrible thing with the way some of them played?
Without question, it's not, Paul, because, again, there was a distinct fall off with Xavier Rhodes last year. Trey Waynes up and down. Mackenzie, he really hadn't blossomed like they thought he would, but you got some fresh guys, you got some fresh minds. But again, with this COVID, no preseason, no OTAs, all of those things, every nuance of practice is going to be magnified 100-fold. So guys would say, yeah, I got an opportunity to make it during training camp. Not so. Practice is going to be paramount with all of these young players, especially the guys in the secondary.
Now, the players that you will see and or hear about on the fan in the secondary, Cameron Dantzler on the screen now, number 27. We have a rookie spotlight on young Cameron, and here it is. Taken 89th overall, third-round pick. Now, there are those with the Vikings with whom I chat because I haven't seen any practice and they didn't have organized team activities or rookie camp. There are those whose opinions matter greatly to me. Very, very high on Cam Dantzler. I feel very comfortable sharing. I'm not going to say I think he's a cinch to start, but I think Cam Dantzler is going to be a starting corner when this team lines up against Green Bay.
Worst case scenario, he's going to get a lot of time on the field. And the thing with Cam Dantzler is he was a victim. He was really a victim of this COVID thing to begin with, because he didn't. The one problem he had is he ran a disappointing 40 at the combine, and he never had a chance at a pro day, Paul, to kind of reset that bar and put up the numbers that he could possibly put up. But you watch him on film. He's long. He's 6'2". He's only 188 pounds, but he doesn't get run by. He has that speed and quickness to cover some of these wide receivers.
Now, Ben, as we segue to wide receivers, if I were to lay it right now, Dantzler, Hill, and Mike Hughes as the top 3 corners, would you put Gladney in for Hill, or would you put Hill first now, but maybe Gladney can come get him?
I would put Hill in first now, because Gladney just has to prove himself, and they need more and more reps. And you guys know this, Pete, you know this. It comes down to trust. It's not just a rep here and there in practice. Like, oh, wow, you look great. Nah, we want to see rep after rep after rep, and then we want to see a bad rep, and then we will see you come back and have a good rep. So they need to develop trust with him, and I think they have more trust right now with Hill.
Now, let's move to wide receiver. And even though they didn't get him on the field as much as they wanted to, Justin Jefferson from LSU, it is true. I mean, you hear it a lot, guys, where people are like, I couldn't believe he was there. When Jalen Reagor went to the Philadelphia Eagles, the Vikings were flabbergasted. And I'm not even sure they were going to take Reagor in the Jefferson spot. But we'll begin with you, Pete. Justin Jefferson, virtual offseason, has played in and out. What do you think of 18?
You know, I really like what he does. And people had talked to him, when they talked about Jefferson, they mentioned him as quite a slot receiver, that he doesn't run those underneath possession type routes. Don't mistake that. He is a down the field, across the field, wide open runner type of a receiver. And the one thing I did like about him on film was his catch radius, Paul. If the quarterback put the ball anywhere near him, he was able to get out and get that football and bring it in.
Rookie spotlight, KJ Osborne. He's a rookie Cane, played for the University of Miami. Also could be a punt returner this season for the Vikings. We'll get into that more a little bit later. Ben, I know you're quite bullish on KJ. Tell us why.
I like his build, first of all. He's a stocky, strong-built guy, strong lower body, big, thick hips and thighs. So I think he's a sturdy guy. I think he's quick-footed. When you put him in the slot last year, always gaining separation. You put him outside, always getting separation. In this league, it takes guys that can separate the line of scrimmage. He showed that at least in the ACC in college. Now he's got to prove it out here today.
Adam Thielen. So you have Adam Thielen and you have Justin Jefferson. Those are cinches to play a lot. Compared to Pete, the way Stephon Diggs would complement Adam Thielen. How do we think Justin Jefferson will be able to provide at least close to that complement?
Well, I mean, I always go back to last year and with what Diggs had done, and that's the explosiveness, is his ability to get behind the defense. If you want to soften a defense underneath, you have to have a threat to get behind them so those DBs stay back. They don't feel comfortable jumping and identifying routes, and that is exactly what Diggs was able to do. He gives you that burst, that explosiveness, the ability to play fake and get somebody deep. And we need Jefferson or KJ Osborne or Tajay Sharp, somebody who can burn a defense and get behind them. And the one thing, the other thing about Diggs, too, is he put the ball on the ground a lot last year, more than he has. And so ball security, you talk about punt returns and different things with a guy like Osborne, these receivers have to be able to hold on to the football.
And as you see here graphically on Fox 9, Adam Thielen, cinch, Justin Jefferson, cinch. Tajay Sharp has showed up pretty well from what I understand so far. So I believe he makes the team and plays a fair amount. Then you have B.C. Johnson, more on him momentarily. Whether they keep 5 or 6 receivers, that's the key, because now we're getting into Chad Bibi, who got hurt last year. We mentioned Osborne. That Dan Chisenham, undrafted from Penn State. There are those telling me he's one of the, if not the fastest guys here at Twin Cities Orthopedics Performance Center. Speed can kill in the NFL. Now he has to learn how to run the routes and do all the particulars.
No, you're absolutely right, Paul. You can't coach big and you can't coach speed. And if you have a guy who has the straight line speed, he was a track guy in college, ran track in college, so you know he's got the speed to do so.
Yeah.
But receiver is an art form. There's no question about it. He has so much to learn. I make that looking at him to be a great candidate for practice squad, a developmental type guy. Bibi's the guy that I have a lot of questions on, and whether or not he's going to be able to stay healthy and put himself on the active roster this year.
Gabe Henderson with the Vikings Entertainment Network joins us now. Gabe, recently you had a conversation with BC Johnson. Ola BC was fantastic last year as a 7th-round pick. What did BC share with you? And good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you, PA. Like you said, one guy everybody's been high on this offseason is BC Johnson. His claim to fame wasn't the 3 touchdowns scored in Adam Thielen's absence last year. It was the 3 hours spent each night in his hotel room learning the playbook this past year. I got a chance, like you said, to talk to BC Johnson. We talked year 2 goals and expectations heading into this upcoming season. Let's check it out.
Now, with BC, not only the expectations coming into the season being rather big, and that interview, by the way, you'll be able to see at Vikings.com, but the way BC settled into the professionalism of the National Football League from Colorado State, where there's so many things different, Gabe. The corners obviously are markedly better than what you faced in college football, but the route running and just the professionalism behind the scenes, so many people think speed and strength and things like that are cinches to keep you in the NFL. Mentally speaking, if you don't do it right, you'll be out in a hurry.
For sure, and I think BC Johnson is a prime example of a guy like that. He learned the playbook. The athleticism spoke for itself, but at the same time, you got to separate yourself, and his thing was separating himself mentally. Okay, I'm going to spend extra 2 or 3 hours learning the playbook, so once I learn the playbook, it'll just make the game slow down. In year 2, he says these years, it just feels like it's in slow motion.
Now, there we see BC Johnson, and 18. When we think 18s over the annals of Vikings football, like last 15 years, we think Sidney Rice, man, going up and getting those 50-50 balls. Justin Jefferson is so good at that, winning the 50-50 battles. We haven't seen much of that for several years here.
No, we haven't, and you want to have. In this league now, you have the possession receiver, which is going to be the Adam Thielens of the world. We got to make sure that he stays healthy, but we got to have depth at that position.
Vikings general manager Rick Spielman joins us around the corner. It's Verizon Vikings Training Camp Live, courtesy of the Vikings Entertainment Network. From the tailgate to the home gate, celebrate 60 seasons of Vikings football with the limited edition Miller Lite 60th season cans. These cans are coming soon to a retailer near you. Cheers to Miller Time in Minnesota, celebrating 60 seasons of the Minnesota Vikings. Welcome back to Verizon Vikings Training Camp, KFAN, Fox 9, Vikings.com. Pete Bursich and Paul Allen. Happy now to be joined by Minnesota Vikings General Manager Rick Spielman on this beautiful Monday in Eagan, Minnesota at Twin Cities Orthopedics Performance Center. Mr. General Manager, how are you, my friend?
Hey, Paul, how you doing?
Pretty well. Now, with all of the adapting through the offseason, now you're here, you got them out there, we can start judging who's good, who's doing it right, stuff like that. Rick, the more you settle in with obviously fewer distractions, are you beginning to notice an insulated feel with the team and the coaches and everything, obviously, that you've never seen before?
I think, everybody's getting used to the protocol that we have to abide by as far as the testing when you get in the mornings, to the tracers that you see on my wrist right now that we have to wear, to our mask that we're wearing in the building. So there's a lot of new, but I think, as you've seen, we've been here for a couple of weeks now, that everybody's starting to get used to the new protocols and everything that we have to abide by. And now you can just notice, even in practice, the last 2 days, we finally got the team together, and now you see them out there for the first day in pad. So we're excited to get started, and it feels like football now.
And as you can see on Fox 9, we have this drone coverage of practice that is absolutely terrific. Pete?
And Rick, so as a general manager and a personnel guy, you guys absolutely love film. You love film for evaluation. You get to watch all of the other teams in the NFL in their preseason games. Now there's not going to be any film. There's not going to be any games to evaluate your own players and other players in the league. And what is your reaction to that, and what are your thoughts on that? Are you going to be able to see enough in practice over the next few weeks of your own guys to make those kinds of same decisions?
I think we'll be able to see enough. I think Coach Zimmer will put this team in a position where not only do we got to get ready for that opener without preseason games against Green Bay, but also so we can get the proper evaluations, because you're not going to see these guys watching down or running down live on special teams. So we're going to create some game type situations and may have a couple of live periods so we can get some tackling in, but also being smart at the same time. As far as trying to cover the other teams, this is the first time we're not going to be able to do that. So, but with George Payton and Jamal and Ryan Munnins and Jamal Stevenson, those guys have came up with a plan on how we can adapt. And so we put in a couple things that I won't talk about on how we could potentially still cover the things that we need to cover in the preseason, although we're not going to see them live or on tape in preseason games.
Now, when it comes to special teams, Rick, not only here but everywhere, seriously, navigating special teams with no preseason games, how difficult is that?
Ask Pete, because he may not have been on the team.
Absolutely right.
He may have been doing KFAN a long time ago.
Exactly right.
KFAN, but anyway, go ahead. But seriously, though, I mean, I'm sure you have your gunners. I mean, you got Abdullah, Amir Abdullah, phenomenal special teams guy. Punt return, kick return, and just the communication of running in and out and, knowing where to go,
Well, a lot of that you can do during practice, as far as, they go through a rehearsal on game management situations, running punt team on and off. Fourth down, we didn't make it, so Coach Zim will run the punt team out there. Or if you want to go for a field goal, what they call Mayday, there's just a whole bunch of things that we're going to be able to do. You're just not going to see it in an actual game. But you got to also know that once we get into that game, just like 31 other teams, it's going to be the first time that a lot of these young kids especially are going to be in those situations. So you can try to emulate as much as you can out here on the practice field, but it's not like being in a live game. So I'm sure there'll be some growing pains as we go along, but very excited about what we've seen so far, especially in our young guys, and can't wait till we continue through camp.
Now, Rick, you unlike every other offseason, you didn't have a chance to sit down and see these guys on the hoof. Is there give me 2 or 3 names of guys that have come into the building that you've seen that passed the eye test, that look like they've done their work in the offseason? Because they had to have been a little nerve-wracking for you guys, because you really didn't know what kind of shape and what kind of physical condition these guys were going to come in.
I would say just in general, they all came in great shape. In fact, we had the body weights, the body fats all taken when they came in. You can tell a lot of these guys came into shape. We weren't disappointed in really anyone when they came in and looked like after a long off season. And I think that goes back and reflects the type of character, how important football is to these guys. And I know, for us to try to reach our ultimate goal, I know it's just as important for these guys in the locker room. So they took care of themselves, and we were actually, I wouldn't say surprised, but very pleased with how everybody came back in shape. And just to give you a little hint, Pete, if I start mentioning names, maybe 31 other teams out there who do not know their names, but if I'm giving them high praise on the TV and in the media, all of a sudden their names become known.
Or you could also okey-doke them, too. You can say, this guy looks great. Yeah. He only has one leg. Yeah, hey, he still looks great.
I had no idea Penn State had a track team. But
hey, Oli Udo looks very good at corner this year.
Right. There you go.
Hey,
there you go.
Well, one guy we know was prolific in college, whether it's inside or outside. Your first-round pick, one of your two, Justin Jefferson, virtually speaking, then you get him back, strength and conditioning, organized team activities. Now, just overall, what are you liking about Justin?
I think it's everything that we've seen on tape, everything when we're actually out scouting live that we saw when we went out and scouted him. Not only does he have great length, but he has great catching radius, very nimble, being able to adjust to off-target throws. The one thing that really stands out is his route running ability and his ability to accelerate upfield, to drop his weight, to get in and out of cuts, and then to accelerate after the catch. So he's been very impressive so far, and we're looking forward to see what he does for us.
Last one for you, Mr. GM. Rick Spielman, nice enough to join us on KFAN, Fox 9, and Vikings.com.
I just got to ask you,
what happened?
When I'm standing here and I show you some of the jukes and things like that, does that add to the broadcast?
Well, it depends on if it's sponsored by TikTok, because then maybe we can monetize it. But Verizon Vikings Training Camp Live will do for now, boss. Speaking of bosses, first of all, publicly, congratulations on the contract extension for you, well-deserved, and head coach Mike Zimmer. Working with the Wilf family, whether things are normal or they're not, and maybe it's like it took a little longer to get done, it got a little weird, whatever. Working with that family, for you specifically, how important has that been for you?
It's I can't even put it into words. What they meant not only to this organization and to this fan base, but when you're talking about individually, how they take care of their employees, what they mean to me personally, and we've been together for 15 years now, and it's a reflection of how their family-run business is, and that same concept comes here within our building in the Minnesota Vikings. So I feel like the most blessed man in the world to be able to work for this organization and be able to work for that ownership group.
Hey, congratulations on getting those guys back out on the field. Keep everybody healthy, and a month from now, you got Green Bay at U.S. Bank Stadium. Thanks for the conversation, Rick. We appreciate it.
All right, I'm going to do a little side juke and then head out to the field.
Yep, this part of the conversation courtesy of TikTok. Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.
Rick Spielman, general manager for the Vikings. Now, the question where you went down the road of like who's come in and it's kind of jumped out at you, I think Rick, because GMs inherently are so cautious. And some would say constipated, but cautious and reserved would be one way to look at it. I think he thought you meant like this Penn State receiver and he's so fast, and this Texas A&M receiver and we love him, and this 3 technique nobody knows about. We want to try to get to the practice squad. That's a very interesting part, not only here but around the NFL.
Absolutely, is the
Spielman and company have done a great job over the years with undrafted rookie free agents, and they'll pay a premium for Holton Hill or Tashawn Bauer or certain players. They will pay a premium, which on par is higher than you generally get to be a college free agent. I wonder if the quirky nature of the offseason impacts the chances for college free agents to legitimately make teams.
It is going to be tough. It's going to be tough to audition. It's going to be tough to get the plays on film, and that's what I was talking about. Is all the teams watch them. I think what I do like though is when he mentions that the entire team came in and they were in shape. We talked about living in the bubble and the team, getting on each other, making sure that they stay out of trouble, that they stay away from places and keep themselves clear of COVID so they can stay on the field.
Hey, it's Nate Metters.
That is so important. And if they're coming into camp in shape, that means they're taking their job seriously. The veterans are leading the way. They mean it. I think that bodes well for this team.
Watching on Fox 9, listening on KFAN, we are your eyes and ears for Vikings training camp on this Monday. We just saw defensive back Nate Metters on the camera. I just quickly never will forget that game at Lambeau Field. And all of a sudden, there's Nate Metters in the game. Like, some people didn't even know he was on the team. A-Rod just salivating, goes to Geronimo Alice, and we're like, what happened? This is Verizon Vikings Training Camp Live. Pete Bursich, Ben Lieber, Greg Coleman, yours truly, Paul Allen. We have defensive and offensive lines to be analyzed, and an interview with Mike Zimmer coming up shortly on the Vikings Entertainment Network. Hey, the Vikings and Miller Lite are proud to announce Frontline Features highlighting the heroes who have kept us going during the pandemic. Visit Vikings.com/frontline to nominate somebody today. Drone coverage from Twin Cities Orthopedics Performance Center and Verizon Vikings Training Camp is carrying you through. Where are you, Mr. and Mrs. Drone? Hello.
Right.
We have a special teams conversation coming up, so Mr. and Mrs. Drone, you better head over there and go find Dan Bailey, Britton Colquitt, and Austin Cutting, and Greg Coleman. Okay, thank you. Bye. Bye to the drone. Greg Coleman, one of the analysts for the Vikings Radio Network, joins us now. One of the former punter for the Minnesota Vikings. And Pete Bursage also was a special teams demon back in his day. With Greg Coleman with special teams, Dan Bailey made 22 in a row to finish the season. Britton Colquitt, phenomenal season here for the Vikings. Second-year long snapper Austin Cutting. When it comes to reliability and that battery with the Minnesota Vikings, it's pretty secure right now, and that's not generally the case.
It's not, Paul. This is the first time that there has not been a three-ring circus over the last several years regarding the punting and kicking and long snapping and all of those things. You talked about Dan Bailey, his 10th year in the league. Britton Colquitt, 11th year in the league. Austin Cutting, second year in the league. Whenever a staff does not bring in any competition for its punters and kickers, it does two things. Number one, it gives so much confidence to that punter and that kicker, but it also puts some additional pressure on them. Hey, man, this is in your hands. It's all yours to gain, because now there's nobody else to blame. Well, he got more kicks than I did and all of those things. They just finished a series of special teams practice, and one of the drills that they were doing was trying to find those gunners going down to keep the ball, batting the ball back in the field of play from the punter Colquitt. Those things that they were taping, Paul, they're going to pay a lot of attention to that, because without the preseason, without OTAs and all of those things, they're really going to look to see who has that knack. Sometimes you go back, you talked about Pete Bursage being a special teams demon. You talk about Steve Walsh. You talk about Keith Nord and Carl Lee and Terry LeCount and some of the special teams greats, you know, who cut their teeth on special teams. But that's going to be a big, big thing for coaches as the days goes by in training camp.
Yeah, no doubt. Thanks for joining, Greg. He's adjacent to practice. And, you know, with punt and kick return, Pete, Ben Lieber set to join shortly for a 7-on-7 breakdown. There's KJ Osborne. I'm going to make him favored right now to be the team's punt returner. Now, he did it with Miami for sure. I believe when he started his collegiate career with Buffalo, he did it too. And Mike Hughes also would be a candidate to return punts. But now we get into the A, Hughes has been injured multiple times early in his career, and B, he's super important from a DB standpoint, but he has more experience than the rookie Kane. How do you slice and dice through that?
I think it's all comes down to, for me, on punt return, I'll go back to what Denny Green said, is when we're on punt return, all I want when the whistle blows is that the ball is in our possession.
Yeah.
So that means holding on to the football is the most important thing. And we've seen Adam Thielen have some issues with that in games that have cost us in the past. So the main thing for a guy like KJ Osborne, does he look comfortable catching punts? Does he judge them well, and can he hold on? What he does afterward, that's just gravy. And I think if anything with Mike Hughes, that's been something. The ball security part of it is it just doesn't look as smooth as it should. Yes, he's the most experienced at returning punts, but I think that position is wide open, and KJ Osborne has a very, very good shot at it.
Ben Lieber joins us practice side. He's adjacent to the practice you were seeing now on Fox 9 and hearing the descriptions on FM 100.3 KFAN. Last special teams piece here. Ben, who also was very good at special teams. Amir Abdullah really showed himself out last year as a special teams guy. So, like when we were chatting with Spielman, I believe it's more difficult than ever, obviously, to navigate who goes into what spot on special teams. But Amir Abdullah, guys like that, and C.J. Ham, they're staples, aren't they, Ben?
Yeah, I would think so right now. You're looking for our leaders and older guys to step up and be those veterans of presence, and he's one of those guys that should do that. The thing I appreciate about him is when he had an issue with fumbling, he fixed it. When he had an issue with running through arm tackles, he fixed it. So the guy knows how to improve even during the season.
Ben, Pete up here with yours truly, TCO Studio. Ben's next to the practice. Here's drone coverage of 7-on-7. And the footage being provided now via this drone, I think is absolutely fantastic. It's like it's our on-the-fly all-22, and they just showed some Irf Smith Jr. along with Justin Jefferson, Cameron Dantzler, Jeff Gladney. Pete, Ben, you guys both played. Pete, you coached. Carry us through the 7-on-7 and what we're seeing and what's important about this.
Well, you wonder. Some people wonder, well, what do you get done when you know it's going to be a pass play, right? And the defense has technically one more player on the field than the offense does. But what this is all about is for, in the beginning, to know what the coverages are, where you're supposed to drop, but then being able to read routes and learn from those things. And Ben Lieber, I think, just the speed of the practice and the speed of certain guys, you can see when there's indecisiveness in their drop or indecisiveness in their routes.
Yeah, absolutely. And I always thought it was funny when the crowds were here, the quarterbacks would complete a pass underneath in like the check down area and they'd cheer and all right, yay. And you're like, as a defense, that's a win. You know, just like all the things you're saying, the 7-on-7 drill, yes, is slanted towards the offense because there's no rush. The quarterbacks have a lot of time to throw the football. But as a defense, you communicate. You get lined up. You figure out your spatial awareness and all the route recognition pieces. And PA, you mentioned Irv Smith. He's the first guy that I noticed out here, not just because of his shoes, but how quick he looks once he catches the football.
Now, and you just get a opportunity there to see a play where you had 5 receivers out in the route, Ben, and that's absolutely in a game a 3-step situation because you don't have enough people to protect. But you get the long crossing route to the tight end, and he's wide open, and that's communication on defense. I think we saw a lot of that with big plays last year, but that's what you're working on right now. Those crossing routes, defenders talking to each other, passing off receivers.
Ben, they have 4 quarterbacks that we're seeing, Cousins in, Mannion in. After that, you got Jake Browning, who was the 3rd quarterback last year, spent a fair amount on the practice squad, and Nate Stanley, who we see on Fox 9 right now, a bigger kid from Iowa, had a very accomplished Big Ten career with the Hawkeyes. How do you handle the quarterbacks in practice now, where you've lost a lot of organized team activities and you got to see what 8 and 4 can do, but you also don't want Stanley to just like be cut and then go somewhere else and be good?
Well, absolutely, and that's why every snap and every rep is going to matter. Look, when I watched his tape from last year, you could maybe pick apart some of the production numbers. I was not a passing team. They're a run-first operation, but the thing I liked about him is a lot of his production came off of play-action pass, particularly on the move when he was outside the pocket. What's the Vikings offense look all about? It's play-action passing, getting the quarterback outside the pocket. So as many times you can go back to his college tape, put him in those situations in practice, in competitive situations. If he thrives in those situations, then that's got to be as good as preseason game tape at this point.
And how did Stanley look throwing the deep pass? Because that was one of the things in college he was criticized. He only had a 6-yard plus passing average. The question would be, how does he look on the deep throws? And we have one of the best deep throwing quarterbacks in Kirk Cousins. I still think he's one of the most accurate down the field passers we have. How does Stanley look in that capacity?
Well, absolutely, and that's the one thing I've been watching. Just even the quarterback drills, you don't see a ton of arm strength. Now, we make a big deal about quarterbacks that come out with big arm strength, but maybe the accuracy is not there. Maybe the decision-making is not there. I'm not so concerned about that right now. I want to see his accuracy. I want to see how he can process his decision-making. If he can complete those short to intermediate passes, for now, I'm good with that.
Now, Ben and Pete, Ben Lieber, Pete Bursich, Paul Allen, Verizon Vikings Training Camp, Twin Cities Orthopedics Performance Center, KFAN, Fox 9, Vikings.com. Next segment, I am really, really excited to get your guys' opinions on how this defensive line is going to shake out, because Everson Griffin's now a Dallas Cowboy. Linval Joseph is with the LA Chargers. Michael Pierce, prized free agent acquisition, he opted out due to asthmatic situation. So now, as we see Cousins fade to fire and dump a shorty left to Madison, that 3-technique pass rush and that beefeater nose tackle, those have to be decided, Ben, don't they?
Yeah, they really do. I mean, we talk about stopping the run on first and second down. To me, that's still priority number one. That will always be, no matter what the NFL looks like, you have to stop the run on first and second down. But you do that, now you can really give your secondary some help if you get some inside pressure. That's obviously what all quarterbacks hate, is the pressure vertically right in their face and making their feet move. We did not get enough of that last year, and now it's going to come down to these guys in practice, regardless of who's the first and second down run stopper. Who are the guys on the inside at nose and 3 technique that can provide consistent pressure?
We're going to hit that and the offensive line and position battles around the corner. But quickly, Pete, that Justin Jefferson bubble screen we just saw, how fluid and great did that look?
It looked fantastic and great. It's one of those things that they're giving Cousins. You get the run-pass option, and when you see the coverage that you want, you hit him on a good slant route. And, running a slant route is what it's all about. But you see him getting separation right there from the defensive back. That is what you want to see, is a wide receiver that can get some separation.
It is Verizon Vikings Training Camp live from Twin Cities Orthopedics Performance Center. We will weave our way through the defensive and offensive lines when we return to the Vikings Entertainment Network. And Verizon Vikings training camp resumes from Twin Cities Orthopedics Performance Center. Welcome back, Pete Bursich, Paul Allen, and Ben Lieber. We're all with the Vikings Radio Network, FM 100.3 KFAN. Those of you watching on Fox 9 or streaming at Vikings.com, we welcome you to this beautiful facility. And now with the Minnesota Vikings offensive line, the Minnesota Moving Company, this perpetually is the atopic off-season talker for many, many Vikings fans. And with Ezra Cleveland jumping in from Boise State, there's that, which we'll get to momentarily, but there is a constant here, and his name is Brian O'Neill. He, quite honestly, is, for my money, one of the 3 or 4 best right tackles in the National Football League into his 3rd year from Pitt. You have, like, Mitchell Schwartz from Kansas City. I love his game. I like Ryan Ramczyk a lot. But, Ben, I don't know about you. I mean, You've seen Lane Johnson from Philadelphia play a lot. You know, Lane is very late in his career. I like Brian O'Neill better than even like a Lane Johnson right now. And it's specifically because of the way the Vikings run offense. And O'Neill is just so tailor-made. You know, it's like he was created to run this type of offense. Wouldn't you agree?
Well, that's why it's hard to really compare the two, because I think both of those guys fit their offenses perfectly. You look at the way Brian came in, kind of got thrown into the fire a little bit, and they're saying, hey, he needs to gain some weight. He needs to add a little bit more of an anchor. He's got to add some more strength. But he comes in and he does pretty well. And then he gets an off season and he gets stronger and he does all those things. And you watch him out here in the drills. The thing that I'm impressed most about is not only his footwork, but how quick his hands are. They're doing the little drills where there's like punch and replacing, and he's so quick, like a boxer with those hands. And the whole time, he's not losing his center of gravity. He's not high, he's not too low, his feet aren't getting stuck in the ground. He's athletic, he's strong, he's got the right attitude. He's a hell of a player.
Now, before we talk about Ezra Cleveland, the rookie, he could be a wild card, and, you know, how we think that Minnesota Moving Company may go left or right. Pete, then Ben, what exactly are offensive lineman requirements for a Gary Kubiak move-based offense?
Well, I think the requirement is it may be the one system that your athleticism is as important as anything with the offensive lineman. This is not a double team mashing on the guard, moving up to the linebacker, pushing the pile forward. This offensive line needs to be quick and they need to be athletic, because that's what this offense is running. It's run on it's either going to be an outside run, and if that works, great, they're going to keep running it, and then there's a bootleg that off of it that looks exactly the same. So the athleticism of the offensive lineman is extremely important. You're not going to ask these guys to hold double teams for, you know, on the running game and pushing the pile and doing things like that. They're position blockers. They want to spread the field out. You've got to have big guys that can move, and that's where I think Brian O'Neill, being an athlete first, putting on the size later, is just perfect for this offense.
And Ben, as we can see via Fox 9, and they can hear the descriptions on KFAN, 65 Pat Elflein, a wild card in this equation, because quite honestly, with all due respect, Pat struggled mostly last year as left guard. We see him here to the right of Garrett Bradbury, and that is the position he played when the Ohio State Buckeyes won a national championship and he was playing guard. So I'm not saying completely draw a line through everything we saw last year, but giving Pat another chance to show that he's able to grow in the offseason, virtually speaking, and play a position with which he's comfortable. If that's the case, then A, we have to deal with it. But guess what? B, Ben, he might be better.
Well, you just said the key word to me is comfort. Whenever a player is comfortable for whatever reason, whether it's mentally, physically, emotionally, you can play much faster. And if it's just a quick swap from the left to the right, that makes him more comfortable and lets him play more free and faster. Hey, sometimes that's all it takes. And I know it sounds silly that, I'm going to move from the left side to the right side. What's the big deal? But as Pete, as you know, there are certain guys that just can anchor with one foot better than the other. They can inside punch with one hand better than the other. And so if he's better on the right side, it's just going to make the whole offensive line better.
All right, last one on the offensive line, 30 seconds. Ezra Cleveland, rookie from Boise State, 72. He's a tackle by trade, Pete. They've worked him at guard. You know, as of now, he can back up Reef and/or O'Neal at tackle. But that transition for Cleveland, if he does compete to win a guard job, how difficult is that?
He's going to have his work cut out for him, because not only are you going to the offensive tackle, you block the defensive end a vast majority of the time, meaning the mental load isn't there. The physical load is even greater because you're blocking some of the greatest athletes in the world on their defensive ends. But you move inside the guard, things happen quickly, things are really compact, and when you have a really long player, a long offensive lineman, those long arms and those things don't work as well inside in the interior of the offensive line. Now, can he still do it? Can he? And there's a lot more for him to learn as well mentally in playing guard than maybe tackle. But I think physicality is the one thing. They need to find the most physical guard they can and go with that, whether it's Dakota Dozier, whomever that is, Cleveland, whoever's going to fire off the ball and move that, and get to that second level and be able to move. That's who you want.
And with the plays they're running right now, Ezra Cleveland is the second team left guard, Rashad Hill the second team left tackle, Brett Jones the second team center. We segue to the defensive line, and this is more of a question mark, Ben and Pete, than it has been in quite some time. Everson Griffin, Dallas Cowboys, Linval Joseph, LA Chargers, Michael Pierce, beefeater from Baltimore. He opted out. Ben, let's begin with the certainty. Danielle Hunter, 29 sacks his last 2 years. What type of attention do you think he'll receive without having Everson Griffin as his bookender?
Well, the good thing is a lot of offenses are right-handed. So they have right-handed quarterbacks, and usually the strength of the offense is to the right, meaning the tight ends in base situations are to the right. So you're going to have to use those tight ends now to chip block, to give him extra special attention. I thought it was very curious and interesting that with Everson leaving, they did not even think about moving him to the right defensive end, which is the premier pass rushing spot. They kept him over on the left side, which now means the quarterbacks are always going to see in their line of sight what he's doing. He's a big body guy that's very long with long arms. Hopefully he can disrupt the quarterback's throws even without getting to the quarterback.
Now, Pete, you mentioned Ifeadi Odenigbo earlier, 7 sacks in 2019. He really burst on the scene. Defensive end and 3 technique, position flexibility. He'll mostly play defensive end this year. How much can you play Ifeadi Odenigbo and expect top-line performance?
I think he can. I think 2/3 of the time. It being 258, 260, he's going to be a good, solid defensive end option for you. Everson Griffin was not huge. It's more about speed, I think, out in that area. I do believe you can still flip the defensive ends. You could put Danielle over on the right side of the defense if it's a third down type situation. We've seen him move inside. The versatility is what's going to be important. But I think Ifeadi Odenigbo has shown enough consistency. In when he's had the opportunities to play to be a two down type of defensive lineman.
I said wow as you were chatting because there was a Mike Boone run that we saw on TV and/or via the stream that was absolutely as explosive as we've ever seen from Mike. His body is bigger. I wonder if he spent the entire offseason watching that Green Bay Packers film from the game at US Bank Stadium and said, guess what? That's never going to happen again.
I think what he's watching and he's looking at that roster knowing he's got to beat out a guy like Alexander Madison and some of these other good running backs. It's a tough room to get a seat in.
Hey, Ben, before we head to break, tell us what you like about Jaleel Johnson and Baylor rookie James Lynch.
Well, Jaleel, he played so much better at the end of the season. He's a terrific run stopper. He's super strong up top. He's one of the strongest guys on the defensive fronts. Now, if you want to look at him as a pass rusher, he's got to get a lot better in that area. But maybe first and second down run stopper, he's definitely got the talents to do that. Now, James Lynch. Love this guy coming out of Baylor. Big 12 Defensive Player of the Year. You turn on the tape of him, and you kind of like, he doesn't really wow me. But he's super productive. You just, every single time he gets to the quarterback, you're like, dang, there he is again. Oh, tackle for loss. Oh, there he is again. He's not super flashy. He's got a workman-like attitude. I like the way he plays. I hope he makes some waves in camp.
Great job down there, bud. We'll chat with you momentarily. Paul Allen, Pete Bursich, Verizon Vikings Training Camp Live on Fox 9, KFAN, and Vikings.com. We'll be right back on the Vikings Entertainment Network. In celebration of 60 seasons, the Vikings are selecting fans for our 60 Greatest Fans team. It's presented by U.S. Bank. We want to honor the most passionate Vikings fans throughout Vikings history. Nominate yourself or someone else today at Vikings.com/60fans. And those fans taking in the Verizon Vikings Training Camp Live could be part of the KFAN and Vikings Radio Network all throughout the state of Minnesota. We greatly appreciate you following Minnesota Vikings football wherever you may be, because there will be some fun games this year. Let's take a look at that schedule. That is courtesy of Timber Tech going against the grain. If you need an A-plus Rockstar deck, go to timbertech.com. For the CEO, Jesse Singh, who lives in Minnesota, a huge Vikings fan, and he's watching right now. It's timbertech.com, that schedule.
The schedule, I mean, the only things that really stand out is that you have 3 of the first 5 of your games on the road. You have to go to Indianapolis. You're going to Texas. You're going to Seattle, which is a very, very tough place to play. But on the good side, Paul, we only have 6 games before the month of November. So our schedule is really heavy in the second half, November and December, and I think that bodes well, especially in a year where guys are going to come out of the gate stumbling a little bit. You're not going to be as sharp as you normally are because of the lack of preseason games. So I think that the schedule, with everything that's happened, is actually boding well for the Minnesota Vikings in that a majority of your games are later in the season.
Hey, Ben, when you were playing Week 7 bye, October 25th, you like where that falls for the purple and gold?
Yeah, I was just going to say that. I like where the bye falls. You want to be sort of in the middle part, the meat of the schedule, where you can get some momentum in the early parts. You carry that from training camp into the season. You get on a roll, and then you take a break. It's like kind of when your body and your emotions and mentally, you need to take a break. So I like it.
Ben, I've never had a bad bye week, right? There's never a bad time to have a bye week. It's just,
really?
Seriously, you get a week, you get it right after you get week 4.
Do I need to remind you were a coach here in 05?
Yeah, I remember that.
Okay. You had a bad bye week. Well, it's ended at that.
Well, no, the players had a great bye week. We're the ones that ended up having the bad.
Okay, yeah. Now, the at Green Bay game out of the bye. So you get to prep for that at Lambeau Field out of the bye. Ben, do you think Green Bay is going to be good this year?
Yeah, I always think Green Bay's pretty good. I think they have one of the better running backs in the league. Obviously, they get Aaron Rodgers. They did not really add to the receiver core, but look what they did to our team on defense. Their defense is legit. Our offensive line had a hard time blocking those guys.
Yeah.
They move around a lot. They're big and physical. Between them and Chicago on their defensive fronts, I don't like it.
And the TimberTech schedule now brings Gabe Henderson from the Vikings Entertainment Network into the conversation. Weeks 11 to 13, main man, Dallas, Carolina, with Teddy Bridgewater, by the way, and Jacksonville here. So weeks 11 to 13, 3 consecutive at home at that time of the season. Holy cow, is that a benefit?
It's definitely a benefit to having those home games right there. It really shows us who we are as a team. I think those 3 games will help us identify our identity. Coming after that bye week, it's go time at that point. Those rookies aren't rookies anymore. So, after, that bye week, and then you get to, that Thanksgiving time right there with Carolina, Dallas, and Jacksonville, it's going to be go time. So it's going to be exciting to see what this team can put together during that 3-week stretch.
Hey, Gabe, the schedule looks fantastic, beginning with the division rival, man, in a month at U.S. Bank Stadium. That's going to be sweet. Let's fast forward to December 13th at Raymond James Stadium. Tom Brady and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. How good is that going to be?
I think that's going to be a great game. I've always said this offseason, this is a great chance for the Vikings to get a good feel of what it's like to play in the Super Bowl. The Super Bowl this year is going to be at Raymond James Stadium, and that's another point that Brian Billick, I had a chance to talk to Brian Billick this offseason, and he said, hey, he's picking the Vikings to win the NFC North and maybe even reach that Festivus Maximus. Let's see what he had to say about that.
The former Super Bowl coach, now serving as an analyst for NFL Network, Brian Billick. Brian, how you doing today?
Doing great this afternoon.
Looking at this team now, the Vikings in 2020, what's your take on this team, amidst COVID-19 being here right now?
Well, obviously that's the qualifier for everybody. You don't know how all these teams are going to deal with this, how we're going to deal with it as a league. But if you just set that aside, if you may, I think it's an excellent transition for Minnesota. The commitment to Zimmer and that this is the direction we want to go, that means a lot. And particularly in a transition, when you take 15 draft choices, it is in a transition. Now, you certainly have your core there, but it is a transition, and to give that kind of stability to it, that's what good organizations do. And certainly in the NFC, which is a wide open affair this year, in my opinion.
You talk about, schemes, and like yourself, Gary Kubiak, who's running this offense, is under the Bill Walsh coaching tree. How do you see, this Gary Kubiak-led offense thriving under him, play action passing, timing, outside zone run schemes? How do you see that playing out for the Vikings this year?
Well, Gary's as good as there is, as good as there's ever been. He's an outstanding coach, and he does a great job of isolating exactly what his team can do and putting players in a position that are rule specific. He knows exactly what he wants. And when you begin with the running game of a Dalvin Cook, let's remember he comes out of that history of a Terrell Davis and Portis and Anderson and McGahee. I mean, running backs in his style vis-a-vis Mike Shanahan and his history have always prospered. It's going to be based around them. Obviously, it was a loss to lose Diggs, but they addressed it in the draft like they did so many things when they picked up Justin Jefferson. And when you obviously still have Adam Thielen and Kyle Rudolph, this is a team that's going to do very, very well under the leadership of Gary Kubiak.
And lastly, you always use the word Festivus Maximus, getting to that Super Bowl. But before we get there, you got to win the NFC North. Granted, make that wild card spot. Having 7 spots, it raises, it gives you more of an opportunity to make it to the playoffs. But your view, do you think the Vikings have enough to win the NFC North this year?
They do. They have enough to win the conference and go to the Super Bowl. They do. Now, it's very competitive. Like we said earlier, the AFC, you kind of got the 2 teams at the top with Kansas City and Baltimore. In the NFC, I mean, obviously, whether it's the Packers or the Vikings, over on the West, San Francisco is going to continue to be a factor. Seattle looks to be better. In the East, I think both Dallas and Philadelphia are going to be hurt. I think Mike McCarthy going to Dallas was a great pickup. We haven't even talked about the NFC South, where you've got Tom Brady and Drew Brees and Matt Ryan. I mean, in that division. So you legitimately, in my opinion, have 7, 8, 9 teams that can legitimately lay claim to say we are good enough to make this run, not just to make the playoff, but get to the conference championship, get to the Super Bowl, and the Vikings are clearly one of those teams.
Guys, everything you need to know regarding training camp, make sure you guys stay tuned to Vikings.com for all of your latest news. We'll have daily coverage, daily highlights, daily everything. But first we send it back to PA in the booth, who's standing by head coach Mike Zimmer.
All right, Gabe, welcome to the team, and thank you very much for that excellent work with Super Bowl winning coach Brian Billick. As mentioned, Mike Zimmer, head coach of the Minnesota Vikings, will be joining us very shortly from Verizon Vikings Training Camp Live. We are at Twin Cities Orthopedics Performance Center, specifically Pete Bursich and yours truly, TCO Stadium. Ben Lieber's over there adjacent to practice. Those watching on Fox 9, you can see the drone coverage of practice now. When you start to see the gun with players, Tyler Conklin, the tight end there, catching, that means practice has come to a conclusion. And this starts a week of training camp practice for the Vikings, walking up to the regular season, off a virtual offseason. And Mike Zimmer, head coach of the Minnesota Vikings, joins us now on Verizon Vikings Training Camp Live. Hey, Coach, Paul Allen, Pete Bursich, how you doing?
Good, Paul. How's it going?
Pretty good, man. Your rookie corners. What do you think at this stage?
Well, they did pretty well today. They covered in one-on-one pretty good, and they made some nice plays in the team period.
Dom Capers, the well-respected Dom Capers, is on your staff. During this virtual offseason, did he in any way provide you any, sneaky blitzes the adversary will never see coming?
Well, we're always talking about blitzes, and, it's always good to get another opinion, somebody else in the room to talk about some of the things they've done in the past or things they saw or things they've studied.
And Mike, the Pete Bursich here. I know a lot has changed this year, is all different. Other than doing your press conferences via Zoom, is there anything else that you kind of like about the new way of business here?
Here we go.
Not really. The meetings, I'd prefer to be in the room with them so I can, talk to them, see their face and things like that. And then, I guess other than that, not really. Just I'd rather get back. I'm old school, so what they tell me.
Now, Mike, with your pass rush with Danielle Hunter and other spots set to be determined, is in any way, and this may be the dumbest question you've gotten all year, Hercules Mataafa, is he with that speed and that tenacity and now another year of experience? Is there a big opportunity there for Hercules Mataafa?
Yeah, Paul, I think there is. He's put on some weight. He's gotten stronger. I think, he needed to do that. He's working real hard. We just have to figure out, what's the best combination of guys when we start getting going like we did today.
One more question on a couple guys. Cameron Dantzler. I loved what I saw with him on film. He's a 6'2" kid. He may not be as heavy maybe as you want a corner, but what does that length provide him? And the lack of a pro day, how much did they think that hurt him in the draft process?
Yeah, it probably hurt him. He didn't run great at the combine, but he had a pro day that he ran pretty well at. And but a lot of people didn't get a chance to see him. We liked him a lot on tape. Adam Thielen came up to me during practice today and says 27 is going to be really good. He's got long arms. He's got good length, so he uses his hands well. And, so far he's done a nice job covering.
Hey, Mike, at this stage of the equation, with the season, the regular season, a month and small change away, I think a month from Sunday, how frequently do you talk to the veterans about players policing players? And I'm not saying like following people around when they leave here, but just casually reminding people that there's a different way to live this day and age, obviously due to COVID, to make sure we can keep everybody intact.
Yeah, usually every day they get reminded at some point. It's about being smart, taking care of each other. We don't want to get anybody else's family sick. If you go out and do something, you get their family sick or you get the rest of the team sick. So, knock on wood, we've been fairly good so far. And, we haven't had any positive tests per se since we first come back. So our guys are doing a good job with that. They're doing a good job in the building with the masks and doing a good job, everywhere else.
Time for two more.
Mike, how's it going with the defensive staff and how Adam Zimmer's working in and Andre Patterson and how you guys are going? Do you have it all figured out as how well you're going to gel or how you're going to gel and who's going to be responsible for what, or is that all still a work in progress defensively?
Well, I think I have a pretty good idea. We don't without the preseason games. Usually I don't call many of the preseason games. But without the preseason games this year, I'm going to have to get my butt in gear and get ready to go during some of these move the ball sessions and things like that where I can go. But, those guys have done a great job. The thing that I appreciate about them is they don't wait for me to come in the room. They're in there working. And, when I get in there, then we talk about some of the things that I missed and where we're at from there. But they've done a great job. They're both very, very conscientious guys, and they're trying to do whatever they can to please me.
Mike, not with Justin Jefferson, I mean, there's obviously more of the story to be told, but from a virtual standpoint and what he absorbed to what you're seeing now, what do you think of Justin?
Well, Justin's been very, very good throughout the OT, the non-padded practices, and today he caught a couple balls. He's got really strong hands, catches the ball really well, gets in and out of the breaks very good, dangerous in the open field. Right now he's really, really good in the slot, and he moves outside. He's still good, but he's got some things to work on out there. But he's doing a great job.
If the Vikings offense and defense, Mike, had a real game scrimmage for one half right now, who would win and why?
Oh, Paul, I don't know. It's really early, It's
yeah. Which means the offense is doing really well at this stage, right?
Both sides had their days today.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Ezra, congratulations on the contract extension, and we'll talk soon.
Okay, Paul, thank you.
Yeah,
Bye-bye.
Mike Zimmer, head coach of the Minnesota Vikings. And I hit Zim with that generally at certain points of the offseason because he's so prideful in his defense. His defense traditionally is so good, but there's such a turnover in so many spots. It's a fair question, and the Vikings offense looks like it's going to be really good. A key member of that offense is veteran tight end Kyle Rudolph. We chat with him next on Verizon Vikings Training Camp Live, courtesy of the Vikings Entertainment Network. Welcome back. Fox 9, KFAN, Vikings Radio Network, Vikings.com. Pete Bursich, Paul Allen. Twin Cities Orthopedics Performance Center. There is a drone view of absolutely the most pristine and beautiful practice facility in the National Football League. And it's the home to the Minnesota Vikings and also veteran tight end Kyle Rudolph, who's nice enough to join us on Verizon Vikings Training Camp Live. Kyle, Paul Allen, and Pete Bursich, what's going on, buddy?
Not much, guys. How are you?
Big boy, let me ask you a question. You have 425 catches in your 11 years from Notre Dame. The back left at New Orleans, is that the most memorable?
Yeah, probably. To me, what's more memorable than the catch was, kind of what ensued following the game, being with my teammates in the locker room, celebrating with the guys. That whole week, nobody really gave us a chance outside of people that were in this building every day. And, we knew it was going to take perfect football for 4 quarters, and it ended up taking a drive in overtime as well. And, just being in the locker room with my teammates, celebrating, seeing the emotion on everybody's faces, knowing that it took a team effort to come out of the Superdome that day with a win.
How do you feel about this offense heading into the 2020? Second year you've run this offense. You had 6 regular season TDs last year, man.
I'm excited. Obviously for us as an offense, we're trying to build on what we did last year and the first year in this system. And, thankfully for us, the first time in 5 years, we've had the same system 2 years in a row. And that continuity has helped us through what's been a bizarre offseason up to this point. So being able to kind of just go back and dot our I's and cross our T's, and a lot of things that we learned last year and put in last year has allowed us to hit the ground running here in training camp.
Hey, Kyle, a quick look at the roster. You're the only guy with double-digit experience on the entire thing. So you are the old man of camp. You're father time right now. So for you, what are you working on at this point in training camp? What is your focus? Is it fundamentals? Is it the playbook? What are you focusing on at this stage of camp?
For me, like you said, I'm the old guy in camp, so you're always trying to make sure that I have to take care of my body each and every day to come out here and keep up with all these young guys. From a game standpoint, trying to be more explosive in the pass game, create more separation. And then, I've been called upon a lot in this system to do pass protecting and some heavy lifting in the run game. So today was our first day in pads. You get to go out there in pads for the first time. And, we play on Sundays in pads. So practicing in helmets and shorts doesn't really do a whole lot for you. You got to have your pads on, and it's a different game. You got to learn how to bend in your pads and fire off the ball in your pads. In route running, you got to learn how to avoid with your pads on. So when you're running around in shorts and T-shirts, it's a little bit easier to avoid defenders and run routes. And when you put the pads on, it's more realistic.
If linebackers and or safeties generally cover tight ends, a Vikings defense that does have a fair amount of turnover into this season with right defensive ends, some defensive tackle, the corners, not for you, right? I mean, Kendricks, Barr, Harrison Smith, Anthony Harris, 4 of the best guys on the team always are looking for 82.
Yeah, for me, it's a great test each and every day when I come out here. In pass protection, I'm going against Daniil Hunter a lot, who's one of the best rushers in the league. And then in the pass game, you've got Anthony Barr, Eric Kendricks, Eric Wilson, Harrison Smith, Anthony Harris. The list goes on of guys that I'm seeing, it's just like waves of them. As soon as you think you get by one, there's another one waiting. Harry made a pick today. I thought I was coming wide open, and sure enough, he cut it on the backside. And, that's what you get out of a 9-year veteran safety who's been in this system for a long time. So it makes me better as a football player going against those guys each and every day.
Kyle, you're fantastic. Thanks for the chat, okay?
Thanks, guys. Have a good one.
Yeah, you too. Ben Lieber and Greg Coleman, practice side, they rejoin for some final thoughts on Vikings training camp from today, courtesy of Verizon. Ben, that's always the weird thing about when you watch the Civil War that is training camp practice. It's like, yes, Harry had that interception. Boy, he really sucked that. He really read that thing nicely and kind of sucked in the quarterback. but it was the quarterback Cousins who threw it, and you don't want to see that.
No, that's the interesting thing. It's like sometimes, well, a lot of times, especially when I was with Childress, the defense would have a great day, and he'd break it down after practice, and he was like, oh, that was terrible. We got to do this, we got to do this. And we all look around at the defense like, well, you guys look terrible because we played our butts off. Like, give us some credit. But that's the way it goes in training camp.
And, Greg, after taking a day or a look at practice today, who stood out to you? Did anybody stick around afterwards and do some extra work? I mean, who popped in your opinion?
Great point. We're standing out here at the end of the practice. Dalvin Cook, who wasn't slated to be here because of contract conversation during the offseason. Dalvin Cook out running extra gassers under the tutelage of nobody but himself. That showed me a lot.
Now, from a defensive standpoint, any tiny leans, 20 seconds, Ben, here, with inside on defensive tackle?
No, it was really hard to see some of that stuff. I do want to echo what you guys talked about with Cam Dantzler. You know, not only did he make a couple plays out here in the team drills in 7-on-7, but he just sort of has that swagger like he belongs, and I love to see that out of a corner.
Hey, man, great job down there. Greg, is there anything defensive line-wise or anything that jumped out at you?
No, Mike Zimmer ended practice early, so that meant that there was something during the course of the practice that he really liked and enjoyed.
Ben Lieber, Greg Coleman, Vikings Radio Network, thank you very much and have a wonderful day, okay? Everybody for watching on Fox 9 and Vikings.com, thank you very much for taking in the Verizon Vikings Training Camp Live. Coverage continues at FM 100.3, KFAN, and the Vikings Radio Network with Pete Bursich and yours truly. Candace Anderson, great job producing for Fox 9 and the stream. We will be back on the Fan shortly with more Vikings training camp coverage courtesy of the VEN.
I think we got some guys that buy in and just ready for leadership. So, I think we could do something special this year.
Smart guys, smart coaches, a lot of people who want to win.
When you have a lot of weapons, it's exciting.
Live from the Twin Cities Orthopedics Performance Center in Eagan, this is Training Camp Live.
Welcome back to TCO Performance Center in Eagan. Jim Rich along with Hobie Artigue. And Homie, the first padded practice is in the books, and there was no yelling, there was no screaming. It was actual organized football. Mike Zimmer didn't blow a gasket. That's what we were all hoping for watching this. We wanted to see him grab somebody by the scruff of the pants and say, come on, you know this. But we didn't see it. So it was all good.
And you know what else we didn't see? We didn't see any significant injuries, and I think that's all you can ask for as the players put on the pads for the first time in a long time, probably since the first time since they played that game in San Francisco. Everyone playing some clean football. Back at it as training camp continues to roll on with a long way to go until that week 1 game against the Packers, Jim.
Yeah, we're going to break down what we saw, what we witnessed, what we saw out of Kirk Cousins, the running backs, the wide receivers, the secondary. Lots of things to get to here. And we'll also chat with Vikings general manager Rick Spielman. But what I liked out there today was the crispness of the plays. There wasn't a lot of false starts. There wasn't a lot of mistakes. When plays didn't work, it was usually, I think, Hobie, it was the defense stepping up.
Yeah, also, we saw Harrison Smith make 2 picks, one in 11 on 11, one in 7 on 7. But the veteran guys, this team, we know how many rookies they have. We know how much inexperience they have at some spots. But when it comes down to it, your staples have to make plays. And I think that's what we saw today, Jim. We saw Adam Thielen make a couple of good grabs, but that defense really, really shined here in this first scrimmage, which I guess you could say is to be expected this early on in camp.
Yeah, let's take a look at the quarterback today. And obviously, Kirk Cousins is the one that all fans wanted to see today. And as you said, Harrison Smith picked him that one time. But overall, I mean, Cousins looked comfortable, and he should now because this is his second time through with Kubiak basically running the show.
And also, this is his 3rd year, as you can see on the graphic. And now, with so much inexperience, especially at the wide receiver position, Kirk is going to be called upon a lot today. I heard him whenever he was in a huddle after a play. Something blew up from the defensive line, and he started to try to get guys in gear. I heard him be a very vocal leader. This early on, you have to like what you're seeing from Kirk Cousins and also what you're hearing. With so much inexperience, you're going to need a guy to step up and really take in the reins of this offense, and Kirk is going to have to be that guy, and I think we saw that today. The initial steps here in this 2020 season of him doing just that, Jim.
Yeah, that's absolutely true, and we'll talk about his targets in a moment, but let's talk about Dalvin Cook. He was here today. That was a huge, huge statement on his part, his management team. He doesn't have that contract extension that he wanted, but still, he was here. And then Mike Zimmer was kind to him and held him out of the team activities. So it was a kind of détente, so to speak, between those two. So then we got to see the Mike Boones, the Madisons, guys like that today, and they flashed a bit out there.
Yeah, Dalvin Cook, what he did do today was off to the side. Saw him catching some passes, pretending to run some routes out of the backfield, making a couple of grabs just off to the side. But you mentioned Alexander Mattison. Last year at this time, we were all raving, who is this kid out of Boise State making explosive plays left and right? And we kind of got a glimpse of that again today. But so far in training camp, one guy who has really shown a lot of burst was Mike Boone, who you just mentioned. A lot of long runs. We really didn't see that too much with the pads on today because, again, there's a long way to go because this is going to be what the team is doing from here on out for the next few weeks. But you see Alexander Mattison running down the sideline, very Dalvin Cook-esque, if you will. It'll be interesting to see if that entire group can really provide something out of the run game and also the pass game for the Vikings this season. But they looked very sharp, especially with some of those pass passes caught out of the backfield. Jim.
Yeah, and the biggest thing I noticed was Mike Boone and the explosiveness today, Hobie. That was something that Ben Lieber touched on earlier in the broadcast about the fact that Boone really worked on his upper body, his speed during the offseason, and we saw little glimpses of that today. And again, this is such a huge, or rather small sample size. We can't get too excited, but heck, Viking fans they could drool over what they saw out of Mike Boone today.
And also, you mentioned Mike Boone just yesterday in practice before the pads even came on. He was running full steam ahead, and if you see pictures of him on social media, it almost looks like a small Daniil Hunter with the way he's been working out in the weight room. He's been busy in the workout sessions. Clearly, we'll see if that can translate to the practice field, though, Jim.
All right, we touched on Kirk Cousins and the quarterbacks. Sean Mannion also getting some work today. Nate Staley getting some opportunities, kid out of Iowa. But the wideouts, these are the guys that really have to figure it out. We all know Adam Thielen. We know what the Vikings are going to get from him as long as he stays on the field. But on the other side, it's wide open right now, Hobie.
It is, Jim. And you know what I do like about the Vikings in their process right now? They're keeping Justin Jefferson with the number 2s whenever there's only 2 wide receivers on the field, kind of showing him you're not going to just step in here and immediately take that number 2 position. Olabisi Johnson, who made some fantastic catches last season, especially when Adam Thielen was hurt, he was called upon to make some big grabs whenever it was just he and Stephon Diggs. Also, Tajay Sharp, who the Vikings brought in the offseason, he made a great catch over the middle today. That wide receiver room right now, Jim, it's going to be very interesting because it seems to be a 5-person race when you're talking about the wide receivers, maybe a 4-person race behind Adam Thielen. But right now, they're all jockeying for position, and time will tell who will earn, and I mean earn, that number 2 spot on the depth chart.
All right, everybody wants to see what Jefferson does, so we compiled just a melt of Jefferson from today. And overall, he didn't look lost out there at all, Hobie.
No, not at all. And we talked to him before the team stepped foot on the field. And I asked him, I said, so you guys have no preseason games. The rookies will kind of be behind in that aspect because the first time you get onto a football field in a game, it's going to be against the Packers in week 1. And he said, for us as rookies, we have to make it as game-like as possible. And he said when he was at LSU, that's exactly how they treated things. His offensive coordinator the help is now in Carolina. That would be Joe Brady. He was the passing game coordinator. He's now the OC in Carolina. So he's worked with NFL caliber coaches. And now that he's stepping foot on the field here, I think you're seeing that all come to fruition.
Yeah, it's going to be fun to see. And one quick note about Tajay Sharp that I want to throw in there. I think he could really be an X factor for this receiver group. He's the tallest of those receivers, and he made a great play in traffic today using that height, and hopefully that's the reason they brought him here. Yeah. All right, now, as we said, the Vikings obviously have a lot of things on their plate. We just went over a litany of players that are new here, and they were all brought here by GM Rick Spielman, and he has a new contract extension in his back pocket. The Wilfs feeling that he's the guy that can bring this franchise their first ever Super Bowl championship. Earlier this week, I spoke to Rick about what drives him, what brings him back out here year after year, trying to push that rock over the top of the hill.
When you're fortunate in any work that you do in your life and you have that passion, and every day you wake up and you're excited to go to work every day, and you're excited about the culture in the building, you're excited about the people that you work with, gives you that energy. And, you know, we have such a unique and great ownership group and they deserve to win a championship, and our fans deserve that. This whole entire organization deserves that. So the energy comes from knowing that you've been at the door a few times and we just got to get over the hump. And what do we have to do that in that challenge? So from myself and everybody in this building, that's why we come to work every day.
When you received your contract extension, Mike Zimmer was asked about why he's developed such a good relationship with you. And he said it was because you're a football guy. And what does that mean to you when your coach understands that you understand what he needs?
But I think the background, I remember when we interviewed Coach Zim for the first time and just listening to him speak, and, you know, his dad being a high school football coach and a great coach in Illinois and in the Hall of Fame, and my dad being a high school football coach, how we were raised, being coached by our dads. There were just so many similarities and so much passion on how we saw we wanted to form this culture and this team, the type of team that we wanted to build. That's where the click is. Now, we do have different personalities. We both can be headstrong at times. But it's in the end, we all have the same goal and vision.
Kirk Cousins, he is a guy that, and maybe this comes with the job, the numbers he put up last year were, sensational. Some, top 5 in franchise history. Yet there's still people that think he doesn't do enough. Where are you at with Kirk?
Well, we're very excited about Kirk. One, that he's going into his second year in a system that fits him very well. I think last year he showed numerous times being able to win big games, going down and beating Dallas on national TV in Dallas, the comeback win in Denver when we didn't play very well in the first half, to find a way to win, the overtime winning down in New Orleans, and some of the incredible throws he made in that game. And then we all, it wasn't just him, everybody. We just had a disappointing showing when we got beat in San Francisco, and San Francisco was a very good football team last year. But I think that comes with a territory at that position. Regardless of how many yards you throw or how many touchdowns you throw or things like that, it's always going to be probably measured there on have you won championships yet. But showing what he did from his first year to his second year and how much more comfortable he was, not only with a new team but in a new system, we expect great things from him going into this year, being in a system and being under Gary Kubiak for basically the second year in a row.
Says Hobie that the Vikings offense is ahead of the defense right now, but the defense looked okay today. They're remaking the defensive line this year. Danielle Hunter didn't practice today for the second straight day. Mike Zimmer termed it before the practice that he called it a tweak. But overall, the line looked all right today.
Yeah, the defensive line looked pretty good. Gave the offensive line a couple of fits, especially in 11-on-11 work. They were able to get some pressure on Kirk Cousins, but we really didn't see any run-stopping defense yet because, of course, you want to take your time before you get there. You don't want to tackle someone to the ground. But one guy, a lot of people like Hercules Mataafa at the 3-tech. That's going to be one guy to watch this year.
All right, and then in the secondary, everybody knows Harrison Smith. He had 2 picks today. But Cam Dantzler, that rookie, looks like he belongs.
He really does, Jim. He got a chance to run with the ones, especially when there were 3 cornerbacks on the field today. At the very end of practice, he had a great pass breakup against Adam Thielen. Nonetheless, great play. And I think you're really seeing he has the height, but can he put on the size to be a real big type of shutdown cornerback that Mike Zimmer likes, Jim?
Yeah, it's going to be fun. We hope you enjoyed today's unique television experience. The Vikings' first padded practice. Our thanks to everybody with Vikings Entertainment Network for helping them out. We'll see you later at 5.